The prehistoric landmass Doggerland wasn't some empty wasteland during the last ice age, like scientists used to believe. It was alive, full of trees, animals, and maybe even people. And then the North Sea swallowed all of it like it never existed. So, no, Doggerland was not some ancient gigantic dog pound, although that would have been cool. It was a massive stretch of land that used to connect Great Britain to mainland Europe. You could have walked on it from modern-day England to the Netherlands without seeing water. Rivers cut through it, animals migrated across it, and early humans likely followed those same routes, finding prey, gathering, and building their lives on this land. Then, glaciers melted and sea levels began to rise. Doggerland was drowning slowly. Land turned into wetlands, and wetlands broke into islands. Islands shrank year by year. Forest paths turned into marshes, and rivers widened into channels. And eventually, somewhere between 10,000 and 7,000 years ago, the sea finished the job. But now, scientists have pulled out evidence of a full forest ecosystem that existed here over 16,000 years ago, thousands of years earlier than previously thought. They used sedimentary ancient DNA analysis to figure it out. Every living thing leaves behind tiny traces of itself, microscopic fragments of DNA, and those fragments can get trapped in mud and sand. Over thousands of years, layers build up, and those fragments stay there, like fingerprints pressed into wet cement. Scientists drill down, pull up those layers, and read them like a timeline. When they analyzed sedimentary ancient DNA from 252 samples from 41 marine sediment cores, they found traces of oak trees, elm, hazel, real temperate forest species. And they weren't just surviving there, but thriving more than 16,000 years ago. That's deep into the last ice age, a time we've always imagined as brutal and lifeless, especially in northern Europe. But instead of a frozen desert, it looks like this area was a hidden pocket of life. And this wasn't just a temporary burst of life after the ice, but a deep-rooted ecosystem. It was stable enough to support large trees with massive root systems. You don't get that unless the soil holds together, unless there are seasons, growth cycles, and enough balance for life to settle in and stay. Among all the DNA, scientists found traces of a tree called Pterocarya, a distant cousin of modern walnut trees. The weird part is that researchers believed it disappeared from that region around 400,000 years ago. But somehow, it held on here, and that detail changes how we understand extinction. It could mean that species don't always vanish completely. Sometimes they retreat, hide, and survive in small pockets we just haven't discovered yet. All this means that parts of Doggerland probably remained above water during major flooding events, like the Stagega tsunami around 8,150 years ago. This means this land didn't just vanish, it resisted. It broke apart slowly, holding on in fragments before it finally disappeared. But actually, all of that still exists. It's not alive or visible, but preserved under layers of seabed and miles of seawater. Ships pass over it every day. Waves roll across it. If you could somehow drain the North Sea for a moment, you would see those old river channels carved into the earth, soil layers, and maybe even preserved roots where trees once stood. Another cool detail is that scientists think Doggerland might explain why traces of early humans in Britain seem so scattered. If people lived there, and it's very likely they did, then when the sea swallowed the land, it swallowed their history with it. Campsites, tools, pathways, and entire communities were all gone. Now, Doggerland isn't some one-time anomaly, so let's jump to the extreme opposite, Antarctica, with its endless ice, brutal winds, and temperatures that don't forgive anything. You look at it and think nothing survives here. But scientists walked across it and proved that idea completely wrong. Between late 2019 and early 2020, a team trucked across a remote part of Antarctica. Their instruments picked up something strange under their feet. Not solid ice as they expected, but something softer. So they drilled. Layer after layer of ice came out, until about 40 feet down, they hit something impossible: liquid water. It was a lake hidden under ice in one of the harshest environments on Earth. They tested the water, trying to understand where it came from. Because this place doesn't get much snowfall, the wind strips moisture away. Sunlight evaporates whatever little exists. So, how does a lake survive here? The answer is chemistry. Tiny traces of dissolved materials in the water help scientists find a hidden source. It turned out that a nearby glacier feeds the lake through underwater pathways no one knew existed. And then they looked closer and found microbial mats, living carpets made of microscopic organisms inside that dark sealed environment. Some stretch flat across the lake bed like rugs. Others grow upward in spiky shapes that rise up to about 15 inches tall. That's over a foot of life growing in total darkness, under thick ice, completely cut off from the outside world. And this life doesn't just exist, but organizes and changes over time. It's structured like a miniature forest floor, just in a completely unusual form. Another Antarctica discovery that shocked scientists was bubbles. They sit inside what might be the oldest ice ever brought up into daylight, nearly 1.2 million years old. Now, before this, researchers could only track Earth's climate history back about 800,000 years. That already felt ancient, but it still left a huge chunk of our planet's story missing. So scientists went looking for the right ice to fill in the gaps. Some parts of Antarctica actually hold ice that could be 3 or even 4 million years old, but it's messy and incomplete. They needed a clean timeline, layer after layer, year after year. So they spent years searching for that perfect spot, scanning the frozen continent like detectives looking for a buried archive. And when they finally drilled down into the ice at just the right location, they hit something special: crystal clear ice cores, stacked like a frozen timeline with tiny bubbles inside. Each one came with a microscopic sample of ancient air, sealed off from the world for hundreds of thousands, sometimes over 1 million years. When scientists study those bubbles, they can figure out what the atmosphere looked like, what gases filled the sky, how much carbon dioxide floated around, and how the planet's climate shifted over time. One moment locked inside that ice stands out more than most: the period around 900,000 years ago. That time might have been one of the closest calls our species ever faced. According to genetic studies, back then, the human population dropped to around 1,300 individuals worldwide. Nobody knows exactly what caused it, but climate is one of the biggest suspects. Massive environmental shifts, changing temperatures, unstable ecosystems — everything could have stacked against early humans at once. And those bubbles might hold clues to what kind of world those few survivors had to endure. So when scientists look inside one of those ancient bubbles, they're tracing survival. They're asking how a handful of humans made it through one of the toughest chapters in Earth's history, and what that might mean for us today. And when scientists scanned Antarctica from space, they found something even harder to wrap your head around. Beneath over 6,000 feet of ice, they detected an ancient landscape. Not rough shapes, but actual terrain with valleys carved by rivers and land split into blocks by tectonic forces millions of years ago. A place where water once flowed freely across the surface. This landscape dates back around 34 million years ago, to a time before Antarctica froze over completely. And somehow, in this one region, the ice didn't grind it away. It just sat on top of it, frozen in place, and preserved it like a time capsule. Scientists described it as a ghost, because it shouldn't still exist. Most landscapes get reshaped, erased, recycled by Earth over time, but this one just stayed. When you connect all of this, you can see that Earth doesn't change slowly and predictably. It hides things like entire ecosystems and histories. We walk around thinking we know this planet. But underneath us, under oceans and ice and layers of time, there are entire worlds we haven't even touched yet.
It started as a routine cleaning to scoop some mud off the coast of Indonesia, but turned into a discovery of remnants of a lost, submerged, Ice Age landmass. Archaeologists found more than 6,000 fossil fragments, and among them, 140,000-year-old Homo erectus remains. This find made scientists rethink how early humans lived, moved, and interacted in Southeast Asia. For years, they thought that Homo erectus on Java Island lived in isolation, separated from the rest of the world. But these dredged fossils blew that story apart. It turns out Java wasn't an island at all back then, but part of a landmass called Sundaland. So, Southeast Asia stretched out like someone had drained the ocean, connecting Indonesia, Malaysia, Borneo, Thailand, and Vietnam into one gigantic landscape. Today's islands of Java, Sumatra, Borneo, and Bali were connected by river systems that probably looked like the Amazon, by forests where giant animals roamed, and by coastal plains that would later sink beneath the ocean when temperatures went up. And Homo erectus were not stuck. They were thriving in what honestly sounds like prehistoric bliss. Yep, it was nothing like we normally imagine Ice Age, a sort of frozen wasteland. Sea levels dropped more than 400 feet because so much water froze into glaciers. When all that water got locked up in ice, whole sections of the ocean floor popped out of the water like stepping stones. Suddenly, early humans didn't need boats. They could literally walk from what's now mainland Southeast Asia all the way to places that are islands today. They could do it while exploring and chasing herds across open land. It was sort of like a giant prehistoric highway system. That giant highway matters because it completely rewrites how early humans moved around. Instead of being trapped, Homo erectus had a whole continent to roam. They followed rivers, crossed valleys, and adapted to different environments the same way you learn shortcuts to the office or find new routes to your favorite coffee shop. And because everything was connected, animals wandered freely too. Tigers, elephants, supersized cows, and turtles the size of small cars. People followed these big animals. This among the fossils pulled from the Madura Strait, such as cut-marked turtle shells and cracked open bovid bones. When you see precise cut marks on bone, it means someone was deliberately carving meat off the bone with tools they made themselves. And cracked bones mean they were taking out marrow, which was like prehistoric energy gel, rich, fatty, and perfect when you need calories to survive. That's a level of planning and skill scientists didn't expect from Homo erectus. It pushes Homo erectus closer to species like early Homo sapiens and Denisovans when it comes to behavior. It means they weren't just surviving on scraps, they were actively pursuing animals, processing, and maybe even sharing food the same way later humans did. So if you imagine them as slow, hunched cavemen, forget that. These people were sharp. The techniques they used to process food look eerily similar to those used by other hominins. Not just Homo erectus. We're talking Homo floresiensis, Denisovans, and early Homo sapiens. That opens the door to the possibility that these groups didn't just exist side by side. They might have interacted. Maybe they traded ideas and copied techniques. Or maybe they even interbred or shared territories. All this makes Southeast Asia look not like a series of isolated islands, but like a buzzing human ecosystem, a place where different human species crossed paths. And here's the heartbreaking part. Everything we know about this place, everything humans built, lost, and discovered there, is all underwater now. When the Ice Age ended, glaciers melted like forgotten ice cream cones on a hot sidewalk. Sea levels rose. Slowly, then quickly, rivers flooded, coastlines vanished, entire human landscapes disappeared beneath the waves. Sundaland drowned over thousands of years, and the people who lived there either adapted or moved to higher ground. Archaeologists now try to interpret what these people did, how they lived, and how many human species walked that land. Every time they pull together bone or artifact from the seabed, we get one step closer to rewriting everything we thought we knew about early human migration. And the new discovery could mean that Southeast Asia may have been just as important to human evolution as Africa, the Middle East, or Europe. Looks like Sundaland wasn't a side quest, but a real mixing zone, a place where humanity experimented, adapted, learned, and evolved. Unexpected finds like this one in Indonesia keep popping up around the world and surprising scientists. Farmers in China were hoping to scoop up bat droppings for natural fertilizers inside a narrow limestone cave. But instead, they spotted pieces of fossilized bone that looked suspiciously like parts of a human skull. This skull turned out to be ridiculously old, around 300,000 years old. Scientists eventually named the fossil Maba 1. The discovery happened way back in 1958, but ever since then, nobody could agree on which ancient human species this skull belonged to. During the late Middle Pleistocene, the world was basically a crowded highway of different ancient human species wandering around. Or just maybe, Maba 1 came from a species we've never met before. The big issue was that researchers only found part of the skull, no jaw, no other bones. So it was like trying to solve a giant puzzle with half the pieces missing. For ages, scientists guessed it might be Neanderthal. But now they've used micro-CT scanning, which is like an X-ray superpower that lets you peek inside fossils without breaking them. That's when they noticed weird tube-like structures connecting parts of the brain case, something Neanderthals basically never had. The inside shape of the skull looked way more like Homo erectus, a much older human species. But even that wasn't a perfect match. The skull's size and shape were closer to modern humans and Neanderthals, and it showed traits Homo erectus usually didn't have. For example, it had a shorter forehead area and a thickened bregma, the meeting point between two skull bones. Maba 1 also had a strange dent on the forehead, almost like a bruise frozen in time. Whatever caused it, maybe a fall, maybe anemia, it happened while the person was alive. But there was no sign of infection, so that individual probably healed and kept living after whatever hit them. So Maba 1 doesn't match any known species perfectly, but it shares features with several and has a similar mystery fossil vibe as others found across Africa. In 1976, a famous paleontologist and her team found another human-like skull in Tanzania. That skull had features that looked surprisingly similar to Homo sapiens, even though it was unbelievably old. Scientists think it may be one of the earliest examples of our species ever discovered. That means this skull could help solve one of science's biggest questions. When exactly did Homo sapiens first show up? The sediment layer where that skull was found goes all the way back to the Middle Pleistocene. That's way earlier than what old textbooks used to claim about when modern humans appeared. And then there's a skull that turned up in Zambia's Broken Hill ore mine. Miners literally stumbled on it, plus a few other bones, completely by accident. Scientists started calling it Rhodesian Man, and at first, everyone thought it might be the big missing link between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. But with newer research tools and better dating methods, they discovered it's around 299,000 years old and probably belonged to someone from the species Homo heidelbergensis. Every new fossil acts like a missing puzzle piece on the giant chaotic story of human evolution. Each one helps scientists connect species that once seemed unrelated, redraw family trees, and rewrite chapters of our past we didn't even know were wrong. Let's talk about some unusual drawings. You've probably heard about those large geometric patterns on fields made by spacecraft from other galaxies. They're fake. The circles were drawn by people to attract attention. You might also know about cave paintings that our distant ancestors made to express themselves. Awesome! And still, there's nothing unusual about it. But have you ever heard of strange patterns on the seabed? Do you know what's so strange about them and who created them? Scientists know for sure that they weren't drawn by humans. The deeper the water, the less mobile it is. On the surface or in shallow places, constant currents move the water, carrying nutrients and changing the floor's landscape. But at depth, under very high pressure, these currents are slower. If someone paints a picture on the seabed or swims by touching the sand with their body, those footprints will probably remain there for a long time. It's such patterns that help scientists understand how different marine life moves, how it feeds, how it reproduces. In a word, how they live. These patterns may look like winding paths, circles, or small pits for storing food. Marine researchers mostly know the cause of these footprints, but what they found at the bottom of the Fram Strait between Greenland and Svalbard stunned them. They conducted deep-sea surveys of this region. Scientists sent remotely operated vessels into the depths. Using those machines, they took pictures of the seabed and noticed 106 strange octagonal structures. They were quite strange and kinda beautiful. But what animal could leave this pattern? And most importantly, for what purpose? Scientists suggested that those octagonal footprints might show prey handling. That is, some creature did something with its prey and left such patterns. Was it stalking? Or did some animal grab its prey tightly and drag it along the seabed? The scientists wanted to know for sure. Some of the octagons were grouped, others were separated. After analyzing the images, the researchers came to the conclusion that those patterns were left by Dumbo octopuses. These amazing creatures with jelly-like bodies are inkless and have a pair of large lop-eared fins on their heads. Pretty cute creatures. After the scientists found out the nature of the drawings, they began to study the cause. Why did Dumbo octopuses leave these patterns? The researchers observed them and discovered a strange feeding sequence that was repeated in a circle to catch prey. This sequence included spreading, enveloping, retreating, and flapping fins frequently. Look carefully. First, the octopus slowly floats over the seabed. They're extending the tentacles parallel to the ground. Then they spread their webbed tentacles and grasp the ground beneath them to reach the food. They also flap their fins to catch food that might end up between them and the seabed. After that, they swim off into open water. Their way of extracting food has a scientific name: pelagic benthic feeding. It means they're swimming in the open water and feeding on the bottom. Scientists probably enjoyed watching octopuses because these creatures weren't afraid of the vessels that recorded their hunting process. Moreover, the animals showed curiosity and even swam closer to the camera. And then they sailed away in an umbrella pose. Okay, we've seen patterns that appear because of an unusual way of getting food. Let's now move over to the Japanese coast. Here, on the seabed, you can see amazing geometric designs made for a purpose: to find love. Meet this handsome guy called the pufferfish, also known as fugu. You've probably heard that this fish is poisonous and it's very dangerous to eat it, but you probably didn't know that it painted pictures on the seabed to attract females. A pufferfish male swims above the bottom, flapping its fins on the surface and thus drawing a really beautiful pattern. Then it finds pieces of shells or some kind of trash and decorates the created maze with this stuff. Such a tiny fish the size of a human palm is painting a masterpiece bigger than a round double bed. It works hard to perfect every line, and it's been at it for over a week. But why? To impress the love of its life. If a female pufferfish likes the pattern, then they create a family together. In the middle of this circle, the female lays eggs and then swims away. The male takes care of the eggs until they hatch, but this is an open area. How can a small pufferfish protect its offspring from predators? Well, not only people know about its poisonous properties. The toxin in this fish keeps big predators away, so no one dares to touch it. If the female doesn't like the drawing, it swims away and the poor male is left with a broken heart. The sea current soon washes away the drawing. The fish, after a while, draws a new one and tries to make a family again. But why is it only this fish that draws these patterns? How does its brain work while making this maze? Does it feel aesthetic pleasure creating it? Scientists don't know. The behavior of these fish is very similar to that of bowerbirds. These animals also love creativity. They build beautiful huts from branches and leaves. Then they decorate them with flowers, berries, and basically anything beautiful they find. And they do this to attract females. Fish create beautiful nests on the seabed. Birds create beautiful huts for the same purpose. It's fascinating that these creatures are not so different from humans. So, let's move on to our next drawing. This time, you're unlikely to guess who made it. So, in 2013, a photographer used a drone near the town of Nelson in British Columbia to take pictures. He got beautiful shots of forests, lakes, landscapes, and something strange. The drone caught a maze of unknown origin that was located under the surface of Kootenay Lake. The maze was made from stones on the lake bed near the shore, and it was big enough, but it's unlikely that any marine life would be able to collect all those stones in one place. Then, what is it? The guy who found the maze posted it online. Users immediately assumed that it was a petroglyph, an image carved by ancient people into stone. Petroglyphs can be found all over the world, but this Kootenay Lake maze was clearly not set in stone. Theories began to appear on the internet. For example, that the maze was made by indigenous peoples or visitors from other planets. And there was also a version that it was created by a Bigfoot. The truth wasn't that exciting. Professors from the Department of Anthropology at the University of British Columbia joined the conversation. The first thing they did was reject the petroglyph theory. Petroglyphs, they said, were images etched or carved into the surface of rocks. And that maze is just stones lying close to each other. Professors suggested the maze was created during low tide, which had occurred recently. Later, another photo appeared with a similar maze, but without water. Obviously, it was done by people who were just bored. Nothing ancient, nothing extraordinary. Here's another example. In the North Caucasus city of Kislovodsk, strange stone towers stand on the shore of a local river. Stones of different sizes and shapes lie on top of each other, forming low towers. They look unnatural. It seems that they're about to fall, but they've been standing there for weeks and even months. Perhaps they're glued to each other, or an iron rod passes through them. In fact, they really stand on top of each other and anyone can easily break the towers. But how is this possible? A local artist with an amazing sense of balance carefully builds these stone sculptures. Slowly and patiently, he finds the perfect angle and position for each stone before stacking it on top of the others.
Well, this eerie Lake Huron discovery may be that it possibly contains the remnants of an entire civilization. Whoa, wait, sounds like Atlantis, right? Well, not exactly. But if there really had been an ancient underwater civilization here, it must have been a pretty advanced one. Around 10,000 years ago, two sharp glassy flakes broke off a stone tool and landed on the ground unnoticed. They stayed buried there for thousands of years, until 2013. Then scientists pulled up a small chunk of mud, about the size of a milk carton, from the bottom of Lake Huron, 100 feet underwater. Inside the mud, they found those same two flakes made of obsidian, a shiny black volcanic glass that forms when lava cools quickly. After careful testing, they realized these flakes came from Central Oregon, which is quite a distance, about 2,500 miles away. They found this prehistoric Great Lakes site on the Alpena Amberley Ridge, an underwater landform that once connected what's now Michigan and Ontario. Back then, it was dry land. Early humans used it to build traps for animals like caribou as the Ice Age faded and the Great Lakes began to form. Now, obsidian was the high-tech material of ancient times. It's super sharp and perfect for making tools. If you study the flakes carefully, it's obvious that humans made them. You can see where they struck them and the feathered edges that come from being carefully chipped. That means people were not only crafting tools here, but they also had access to obsidian that came from incredibly far away. It was likely possible through a huge trade network that spanned across the continent. For over 100 years, people have guessed that ancient societies might have existed beneath the Great Lakes, but no one had proof. That's why work on this submerged archaeological site is so important. A team of researchers has been trying to learn more about the 10,000-year-old ruins and the civilization that left them behind for over a decade now. Lake Huron's icy water acted like a time capsule that helped preserve things for thousands of years. So far, researchers have found not only unique stone tools, but also ancient trees with roots still intact and underwater peat bogs that preserved seeds and leaves. It was like an Ice Age version of Pompeii, a scene frozen in time. These discoveries are also helping scientists create new technologies and ways to do underwater archaeology. They've engaged sonars, underwater robots, and divers so far. Now, it's pretty cool that the tools they found on the Alpina Amberley Ridge were way smaller than other tools from the same era found nearby. That might mean a different group of people lived here, and they had their own unique way of life. Even the peat bogs they found, which are about 9,500 years old, hold secrets. They're full of pine needles, seeds, and leaves that could reveal what the environment was like back then. Usually stuff like this breaks down quickly on land, but the cold freshwater preserved it. The Michigan team is working with scientists in Cambridge, England, to extract DNA from the remains. If it works, it could finally confirm what animals lived there, and maybe even more. There are still years of discovery on this prehistoric Great Lakes site ahead. Another famous submerged archaeological site is the lost city of Pavlo Petri. Archaeologists think it is the oldest sunken city in the world they've found and made official so far. Pavlo Petri is around 5,000 years old. That means it existed even before the legendary Greek heroes in Homer's stories. Scientists first spotted it way back in 1904, and then mostly forgot about it until 1967, when Nicholas Fleming rediscovered it. He described it as a Bronze Age city now lying under about 10 to 13 feet of water. A year later, he returned with a team of scientists to study the ruins. Over 6 weeks, using just hand tapes and a basic grid, they managed to map out the city. They found that it covered almost 1,000 feet by 500 feet and had at least 15 buildings, courtyards, 5 streets, 2 tombs, and around 37 small stone graves. They also found signs that the ruins continued onto the nearby island of Pavlo Petri itself. They dug up some amazing pottery, obsidian, and chert blades, and even a tiny bronze figurine that may date all the way back to 2800 BCE. Most of the buildings, though, came from the period between 1650 and 1180 BCE. Then scientists left the site alone again until 2009, when a super team of researchers launched a new 5-year project to really dive deep into the history of Pavlo Petri. This time, they had digital mapping tools and better diving equipment, so they could explore and even excavate underwater. They found another 97,000 square feet of buildings, including a large hall and hidden streets. Plus, they dug up even more pottery that showed people had been living in the city from about 3000 BCE to 1100 BCE, and that the city once had a population of 500 to 2,000 people. No one knows for sure how the city ended up underwater, but many scientists think it was because of an earthquake, maybe around 1000 BCE, or even as late as 375 CE. Because it's the oldest underwater city ever found, some people even believe Pavlo Petri might have inspired the legend of Atlantis. Another contestant for the Atlantis title lies near Japan. Back in 1986, a local diver was exploring the waters near the Ryukyu Islands when he found a giant structure made of perfectly shaped steps and sharp edges. It was 82 feet underwater. Today, the Yonaguni Monument is one of the most mysterious underwater sites on the planet. The structure is nearly half a football field in size. It looks like a massive stone pyramid with layers of platforms and steps stacked one on top of another. No one really knows where it came from or who built it. Some experts think the monument might be more than 10,000 years old, which would make it older than the Egyptian pyramids. One theory is that it could be the last remains of a lost civilization called Mu, a mythical Pacific society kind of like Atlantis. Others believe an ancient culture that lived in Japan as early as 12,000 BCE might have built it. But many scientists and geologists are skeptical about this possible underwater ancient civilization, even though Yonaguni has narrow passageways, arched openings, and right angles that almost look like city blocks. They say that the site looks a lot like natural rock formations, like the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, for example. The whole monument is still connected to a bigger chunk of bedrock, which means it wasn't built piece by piece. And the way the layers of rock are stacked probably has more to do with earthquakes and tectonic movement. It's located in the very active Pacific Ring of Fire. One marine geologist kept going back down there, and every time he found something new. He says he spotted tool marks in the rock, symbols carved into stone faces, and even rock formations shaped like animals. He believes these carvings point to a culture that came from mainland Asia. He said he had identified 10 different structures off Yonaguni, including a ruined castle, a triumphal arch, 5 temples, and even a huge museum. These buildings seem to be connected by roads and channels, and some parts are surrounded by what could be giant stone walls. The explorer believes the city is at least 5,000 years old, based on stalactites found in underwater caves nearby, which would have only formed after the caves flooded. His supporters say they have never seen an earthquake create shapes like this, above or below water. But skeptics blame it all on erosion and insist that whirling underwater currents and sea creatures left holes in the rock. Now, if you want to form your own opinion about it, the spot is open for visitors, and it's definitely a super fun diving experience. The lost city of Atlantis may have actually been found. No, really. 2 researchers were working in the waters off the coast of Cuba when they discovered the ruins of what looked like an ancient submerged city. That happened about 20 years ago, and yet no one really talks about it today. It's like the authorities just took the research, locked it away in some top-secret room, and decided no one else should know about it. But why? Well, I'm going to tell you. Back in 2001, Paulina Zalitsky, a marine engineer, and her husband, Paul Weinswig, were hired to explore the waters off Cuba's western coast. They had 2 main objectives: to search for old shipwrecks, possibly hiding treasures like gold and jewels, and to locate valuable oil and natural gas deposits deep underwater. They were using a sonar. Basically, this equipment is like a sound-based radar. It sends out sound waves underwater, and when those waves hit something, like a sunken ship, they bounce back. The system can figure out where and how far the object is just by listening to the echo. So, the couple was scanning the seafloor with this equipment more than 2,000 feet below the surface. And then, out of nowhere, they found something way more interesting than gold or oil. They found stones. Not just any stones. I'm talking huge, perfectly arranged stones, kind of like a mini version of the pyramid at Chichen Itza, or even better, like a bunch of tiny submerged Chichen Itzas. Yep, they saw that, or at least they think they did. The thing is, sonar doesn't work like a camera. It definitely doesn't record video or take actual pictures underwater. What it does do is create images using sound. And those images are usually just outlines or shapes, kind of like a blurry black and white sketch. It shows you where things are, but not exactly what they look like. And that's exactly what happened back then. The equipment started producing images of these perfectly organized stone structures, and it really looked like some kind of urban development. I mean, the site was just too organized, too symmetrical to be just random rocks. But it sounded too good to be true. I mean, this discovery could totally change everything we know about ancient civilizations on the American continent. So the scientists decided it would be too irresponsible to announce anything without finding more evidence first. And that's why they decided to go back to that same spot. This time they sent down an underwater remotely operated vehicle to actually see what was going on beneath the sea. See? This robot was basically an underwater cameraman. And yep, it confirmed it. There was definitely something strange down there. It looked like an ancient city made of huge, smooth blocks of granite. These rocks were about 8 feet by 10 feet. Some were in pyramid shapes, others were circular. Some seemed to be deliberately cut and then stacked on top of each other, while others appeared isolated from the rest. Together, they looked like they were forming corridors and outlines of rooms. It was like finding large buildings in the middle of an underwater desert. These images were enough for Zalitsky to seal the deal. Back then, she confirmed that this amazing structure, her words, could have been a large urban center. Again, her words. Then the couple started to speculate. They said that these structures were probably built more than 6,000 years ago, which would make them older than the Great Pyramids of Egypt. It's even older than the famous Maya, the civilization that used to live in the Americas and is known for their ancient and advanced temples. The research also suggested that these structures might belong to a civilization that lived on the American continent thousands of years ago, and that we didn't even know about. This supposed civilization once thrived on a 100-mile land bridge connecting Cuba to Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. But then, something catastrophic happened. According to their theory, the Earth's faults shifted beneath the surface, leading to a massive earthquake. Then, in the blink of an eye, the entire bridge was destroyed. The land was swallowed up by the sea and ended up at the bottom of the ocean, and this civilization disappeared. Of course, all the connections to the famous Atlantis myth got the media totally hooked on the story. News websites ran headlines like "Lost City of the Caribbean Found" and "Atlantis Found in Cuba." So, could that really be Atlantis? I mean, did they finally find the remains of this supposedly super advanced and lost civilization? Well, it's hard to say. From the start, part of the scientific community wasn't buying into the story too much. First, there's the issue of the date. Saying that this civilization existed at this spot at least 6,000 years ago just wasn't very credible. Then, some European archaeologists argued that the stones they found using sonar might just be natural limestone, not perfectly sculpted granite. And third, it was too deep. Even with the whole theory of Earth faults opening up and swallowing everything, it's still hard to explain how an entire city ended up so deep in the ocean. For comparison, there is Heraklion, a real ancient Egyptian port city that got submerged. Today, it is only about 19 feet underwater. But this so-called Atlantis city is at depths between 2,000 and 2,460 feet. See how that's totally different, right? People think it would have taken around 50,000 years for such stone structures to sink to the depth where they are said to be found. And according to experts, none of the known civilizations from that long ago had the ability to build such structures. But for Zalitsky, yes, it was possible. She still believed in the fault theory to explain how this land ended up at the bottom of the ocean so fast. Big movements of the Earth's tectonic plates are usually followed by things like volcanoes and earthquakes. So, according to her, it's a powerful event, and the island sinking could have happened really quickly. This earthquake theory could also explain why some of the megaliths on the seafloor look organized while others don't. But to really prove any of this, they needed a specially designed robot to go down there again and take samples of the rocks and sediment. That way, they could figure out how old the rocks were and maybe even find signs of human life, like carvings, sculptures, or artifacts. The problem is, drilling into those structures isn't easy. They look like granite, and drilling granite that deep underwater is seriously tough. And more than anything, they needed money to do it, a lot of it. So maybe they just never got the funding. Because even with all that initial hype, no further explorations or studies were ever reported. And that lack of follow-up sparked a lot of speculation. Some people even wondered if the story got shut down on purpose, like maybe the authorities wanted to keep something top secret. As if this underwater city was built by some kind of higher extraterrestrial being, and they just don't want us to find out. But truth be told, the strongest argument for saying, yeah, that is definitely a lost city, is that nature supposedly couldn't have built something so symmetrical. Geologists did try to find natural explanations, or at least similar examples from other parts of the world, but they came up short. Still, just because we haven't found a clear natural explanation doesn't mean there isn't one. Nature can create some pretty wild and unexpected stuff, so honestly, that whole too perfect to be natural angle is kind of a weak argument. What most likely happened is that experts just weren't convinced it was actually a sunken city, and that's probably why no one followed up on their work. Over time, the buzz faded, the story disappeared, and the site slipped back into silence. And without more data, the true nature of those underwater formations off Cuba's coast is still a mystery.
Ever since Plato wrote about the allegory of Atlantis, humanity has been fascinated with the possibility of the discovery of a thriving underwater civilization. Fancy joining me on a trip to a few historic underwater sites? Let's see what we can find out about ancient civilizations. The first one on our list is what is being called the underwater Stonehenge. Scientists have recently discovered a mysterious pile of cairns that stretch for miles under the shimmering waters of Lake Constance at the borders of Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. Archaeologists began to explore the site back in 2015, and they haven't been able to understand yet what it was actually used for. What they do know is that there is a 12-mile line of 170 human-made stone cairns under Lake Constance. Scientists say this was most likely the result of a combined work of several villages. The cairn site was probably used for some collective purpose. The formations are huge. Some of them are several dozen feet wide. The most amazing discovery so far is that the site dates back to around 5,500 years ago. Now, what were we humans doing back then? We were living in the prime years of the so-called Stone Age. We were beginning to make artifacts from stone and use them to hunt and eat. Can you imagine what a knife and fork might have looked like back in those days? It's no coincidence that scientists call this site the underwater Stonehenge, though. Both sites are believed to have been built around the same period of time. You see, Stonehenge dates back to around 3100 BCE. Both sites carry the distinct characteristic of stone monuments built in a circle. Not to mention the fact that scientists also haven't figured out why on Earth our early ancestors would feel the need to build a monument such as Stonehenge. Well, the mystery of Lake Constance hasn't been solved yet. Who were the Neolithic people from this area? And for what purpose did they go through such an amount of work and effort to build this huge stone site? Next, we're taking you on a tour of the Ryukyu Islands just off the coast of Japan. You're diving deep down to an archaeological site. But I should warn you, the waters of the Pacific Ocean are far from smooth. It doesn't take long before you see a huge structure, thanks to the sunlight shining down on the seabed. At first, it looks like Machu Picchu's ruins located across the globe in Peru. As you approach the site, you slowly figure out its forms. A pyramid-shaped structure, arches, staircases. It's something that could have easily been a palace or a castle. Could this be a sign of human activity? What you've just seen is known today as the Yonaguni Monument. It also goes by the name of Japan's Atlantis. The entire monument is about the size of 5 soccer fields and the height of a 5-story building. Its most surprising feature is its expanse of terraces. Explorers and scientists believe that Yonaguni might be 10,000 years old. But whether it's a human-made structure or a natural formation is still under debate. For Japan's top marine geologist, Professor Masaki Kimura, Yonaguni is the heritage of a lost civilization. Kimura has dived to the bottom of the ocean to explore the ruins over 100 times over the past 10 years. According to him, there are clear signs of human activity down there. On the monument's surface, there is a triangle-shaped concave that is a historical symbol of water fountains in the region. There's also a giant turtle carved on the eastern side of the structure. And, according to Kimura, turtles have an important cultural meaning. Several pieces of stone tools have been recovered from the site. Their estimated age is around 10,000 years. However, not all scientists support this theory. For many, Yonaguni is the result of thousands of years of erosion. The fact that the monument is composed of one massive rock leads them to believe it's not human-made. The defined edges and flat surfaces resemble a natural formation in Northern Ireland, known as the Giant's Causeway. The basalt columns look like the ruins of a palace, but they're actually the result of volcanic activity in the region. Now, you're flying to the coast of Greece, 4 hours away from Athens. More specifically, you're in the Peloponnese Peninsula. You dust off an old snorkel and head for a free dive on a bright sunny day. Sometime into the dive, you start noticing patterns on a seabed. 13 feet below the surface, outlines of familiar objects start to appear, one by one. As you continue swimming, what looks like the outline of an entire city emerges in front of your eyes. Are you wondering how water could have taken the whole city? Rocks are perfectly aligned into what appears to be the foundation of a building. This is Pavlo Petri, an ancient city you've probably heard about for the first time. It was discovered by Nicholas Fleming, a British oceanographer, when he was on vacation in Greece. He had heard rumors about Pavlo Petri's existence and indeed found several artifacts on the seafloor. He went back to the area a year later with the team. They found a site filled with pots, storage vessels, and tools. A kernstone, for instance, is a tool used for grinding grains and turning them into flour. Multiple amphoras indicate that this settlement dates back to the Bronze Age, 5,500 years ago, when people started living in towns. The settlement is believed to have existed for over 2,400 years. Today, Pavlo Petri is considered the oldest submerged town ever discovered. And what's impressive is that it wasn't a simple village. It was a vibrant port city with stone buildings, a marketplace, streets, and even squares. The next stop on our voyage is one of today's most famous underwater cities that has been turned into an archaeological park. The city of Port Royal in Jamaica exists only below the surface. But in 1692, it was one of the wealthiest cities in the Western Hemisphere. Port Royal was the center of the British Empire at the time and an important trade city that attracted people from all over the region. It was also home to real-life pirates of the Caribbean. On the morning of June 7, 1692, the people of Port Royal met a different fate than they had probably expected. The city woke up shaking. People were thrown out of their beds by the power of a massive earthquake, ranking 7.5 on a Richter scale. One survivor said he had seen Earth opening up and swallowing the whole town. What he said could be true, as the city was mainly built on sand. The ground swallowed buildings, roads, you name it. Geysers erupted, and finally, waves as big as 10-story buildings hit the city. About 33 acres of the city disappeared under the water. Amazingly, most of its 17th century remains are still in good condition under 40 feet of water. Archaeologists have found taverns, storage rooms, kitchens, and recreational buildings used for diverse purposes. You can also see a grand lion statue, a submerged bridge, and many picturesque arches. Of course, I saved the best for last: India. Just off its coast lies another sunken marvel. A site known as the Lost City of Cambay is located in the Gulf with a similar name. It remained undiscovered until 2001, when the National Institute of Ocean Technology made a routine water assessment. With the help of sonar technology, which sends a wave sound to the bottom of the sea, they found something far beneath the surface. Images showed well-defined geometric shapes spread along a 5-mile stretch. The remains date to more than 9,500 years ago, meaning this civilization was lost at around the end of the Ice Age. Debris recovered from the site included construction material, pottery, beads, sculptures, and even bones. Scientists argue whether these artifacts are indeed from the site, but if they truly are, then the lost city of Cambay might be the oldest civilization in the world.